Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this one, we're going to be going over Ice Spear. Ice Spear is incredibly powerful. We're going to start with an awesome fight against Malekith here real quick, and then we're going to go over the details on this one. This is an incredibly powerful build. Ice Spear is rather unique in the fact that obviously it gives you a ranged attack. It is a little bit on the short side, but it has good frost buildup. It does a little bit of posture damage, and we're going to talk about how it scales with the weapon and what you can put into your weapon to get more damage out of Ice Spear. And as you can see here, we are fighting a late game boss. We're going to do a couple late game bosses. This is on New Game Plus 7. This is one you're not going to want to miss out on. I was definitely impressed with Ice Spear overall. I was impressed with how the build came out, the amount of damage we're able to get, the frost buildup, the convenience and ease of use of this build. It's something that can carry you to, I would actually borderline put this on overpowered to an extent. If it had a little bit more range, I think it would definitely be overpowered. It does lack that given the fact that it's a medium range, but it is incredibly powerful Ash of War. First things first, I want to cover the basics. By the way, everything will be timestamped in the video. From now on, I'm going to be doing as many timestamps as possible in these videos to help you guys out, to make things a little bit easier to navigate as well. First things first, where do you get Clayman's Harpoon? Well, you get the Clayman's Harpoon by fighting the Clayman. They're at the below section of, if you go to Limgrave, I'm going to show you on the map where it is, and I actually didn't have the map for this part of the underground, but I'm going to show you how to get there, and it's quite easy to understand how to find this. You can actually get this weapon very early. It's something that you can get pretty much from the start of the game, going from Limgrave. You can go over to Mistwood, and then I'm going to show it on the map here, and there's going to be a section where you can get to the first section of the underground here, right by the minor Erd tree that's right there. And then once you're below and you take that elevator down, you can't miss these guys. They're all over the place. They'll drop the Clayman's Harpoon. And next up, we're going to talk about where you get Ice Spear. The Ash of War Ice Spear is actually fairly easy to get to. It's the first Knight's Cavalry that's in Liurnia of the Lakes. It's the first one that you're going to run into. It does have to be Knight like usual in order to find him and face him. I had the Scavenger Curved Sword bleed build up here, so he didn't take too much time to kill as he went down fairly quickly with this build. This was something very simple to do as far as fighting him. He's not particularly challenging. Even on New Game Plus 7, you got to think he's one of the early game bosses. The Knight's Cavalry does have a little bit of an annoying moveset, given the fact that they have some reach and whatnot, and they're going to hop around a lot on their horse. But even so, not too bad to face, even in the early game. And there it is on the map there in Liurnia of the Lakes. And again, that's the first Knight's Cavalry that you're going to run into there. Real quick, we need to talk about two different setups. One setup that I'm going to show you right here, and another setup that we're going to use in this video. Now, something interesting about Ice Spear is it actually scales with Dex and then Intelligence. So if you go with a Dex weapon, you're going to get more damage out of it. You're going to see it here, the setup as far as this goes. This is going to be the one that's dexterity based, and it's going to be more damage. You can pause those stats if you want to run that, and you can use anything. It doesn't have to be the Clayman's Harpoon. But on the other hand, if you want something that scales well with cold, that has frost buildup upon hit, while also getting a C in intelligence and a C in strength and giving you a good amount of damage with Ice Spear in general, then the Clayman's Harpoon is the way to go. It's the way I ended up using this video. It's the way I chose to go as far as the build and setup, because it's more convenient. You can use the weapon itself, you can use Ice Spear and everything together and get a good combination out of it. You're going to see the damage it does on the tree avatar here as we take steps back, and it has, again, around a medium range. It's not too far as being able to use it. You're not going to get an incredible amount of range out of it, but you can see there the damage is very good. The frost buildup is substantial too. After a couple hits, you're usually going to proc frost on most enemies. And without further ado, we're going to get into a relatively decent fight with the Fire Giant here, as he's probably going to be the big event in this video. And he is pretty frost resistant. Let's see how we can do against him with the Clayman's Harpoon and Ice Spear. And as far as the Fire Giant here, he took 3 tries in total. Now, the second phase is much more challenging than the first phase when you're running a build like this, because we can easily hit his ankle and we can do a lot of damage, magic damage, the frost damage in general. And again, as far as the Fire Giant himself, he is incredibly frost resistant. He's actually so frost resistant that you'll be lucky to get 1 proc throughout the entire fight when even applying it consistently. He just has a high resistance to frost in general. However, he is weak to magic damage. We do have the Clayman's Harpoon here, and we can do a substantial amount of damage in the first phase. With that being said, the second phase is still going to be challenging, and it definitely was challenging with the Clayman's Harpoon. If you're ever having trouble with the Fire Giant, one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you is Keep in mind, he's more intimidating than his actual attacks are as damaging. And yes, they do hit quite hard, but they're incredibly slow. Everything that he does is very easily dodgeable if you really focus up and dodge him. And then you can punish him, and you'll have large windows to do so, particularly in the first phase, where again, even though he's more mobile, every single one of his attacks is going to be relatively slow. Now getting into the second phase, going for the safer portion of him that's definitely highly resisted to any type of damage in general. Let's see how we can do this against a highly resisted fire giant in terms of frost and the damage that we're going to get on his feet here. Let's see what we can do. And we're going to use the weapon itself. This is where the advantage part comes in fights with using the Clayman's Harpoon. Having that C in intelligence, having that C in strength, having that good scaling on the weapon itself while also getting good damage from Ice Spear makes for a solid combination. He fell there, which I thought was hilarious. But anyways, back to the fire giant here. Let's see if we can finish him off with the Clayman's Harpoon. So the idea, by the way, here is just to hit him as many times as we can. We're getting 105 frost per hit, and we can hit rather quickly. But again, that frost resistance that the fire giant has, his resistance in general to frost, is just so high that it makes it a little bit difficult to do so. Even with that said, we're going to see if we can get a proc here to make our lives a little bit easier. He does beat me up a little bit in the second phase. Keep in mind this is New Game Plus 7, so he does more damage, and he has a total of 64,000 HP. But as we can continue to apply pressure and hit him, we can see if we can build up frost. Again, this is a relatively tough enemy to do this on, so that's why I wanted to throw the fire giant in here and do some late game bosses. And at the end of this one, we're probably going to be towards the end of the game, so my next video might be in the early game, which is always a nice little bit of a relief. I try to do a couple builds per each run through lately, especially on New Game Plus 7, and make the most out of each individual boss fight and whatnot. Take on different bosses, have a variety of them in my videos if I can. I'm going to try to do that more too, and just make sure in general that I can give advice as far as the builds themselves and the enemies that we face, because I know a lot of people have trouble with the fire giant. The fire giant is one of those enemies in the game, one of those bosses in the game that can be incredibly intimidating the first time. But again, with the right approach, with the amount of damage that you could do to him, even if it's a little bit at a time, it's going to build up and you're going to take down the fire giant without too much trouble as long as you have patience. Yeah, by the way, I currently have 8 characters in total. I'm on Xbox Series X, but I mainly use 3 now. They're 150 characters. I occasionally use my mage, which is 200, so it's mainly the 3 same characters that I kind of go through different game cycles with, and I take on different bosses with different builds and turn them into cool videos. So if that's something you like, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be a lot more of that to come. And down goes the fire giant after an epic fight with Ice Spear and the Clayman's Harpoon. What can I say after all? I beat him one time with Vare's Bouquet, so I guess it can't be as bad as that. But yeah, the second phase was a little bit rough. Let's admit that watching that was a little bit tough to get damage on him. But we did get the Frost proc in the end because the buildup is nice on the melee part of the weapon itself. And let's show off the Godskin Duo here, how much damage we could do, and put them to sleep. And out like a light goes the Godskin Duo. Let's see how much damage Ice Spear can do to these guys. By the way, this does posture damage, a little bit of posture damage on each individual hit too. I'm going to show another clip here in a short bit that's going to show a posture break. As far as that goes, it's something you can get with Ice Spear. It's not a ton of posture damage on each one, but you do get it. By the way, another thing you can add with this build, since we're intelligence invested, is if you want to throw in spells, if you want to turn it into your own thing, you'll have a lot of variety with the stats set up and build I'm going to show you in a little bit. It's going to open up a ton of variety in that sense, where you can use Ice Spear, rock the Clayman's Harpoon, while also using spells and anything else you want to do that's intelligence based. Aside from fire and I think strength, one of the physical portions they're resisted to, they're very easy in general to do damage on, and they're not going to be nearly as frost resistant as, say, the fire giant. So this is something I wasn't too concerned with. I didn't go in here thinking that this was going to be an incredibly challenging fight. I was going to use sleeping pots to show off the damage. That way we can see how much the damage stacks up with buffs and whatnot. And it does do, again, a lot of damage, a lot of added damage to it as well, because we have it set up to where we're using the Faith tier, and we can use Howl, Shabriri, and Golden Vow to give us 40% more damage on Ice Spear, which is a nice buff and boost to the weapon itself, and then obviously to its Ash of War too. Let's finish off the Godskin Duo rather quickly here. And again, the damage that you're going to see on screen is really quite good. This wasn't too much of a concern given the fact that I mentioned before, obviously, and you saw throughout the video that I was always going to use sleeping pots to see how much damage we could stack up, but I was even surprised, even with that, how much damage it's able to do. Ice Spear is quite good. Now I want to show this clip because we end up getting a posture break here with Ice Spear. If you consistently build up pressure and you're not absolutely obliterating your enemies like the Godskin Duo there, you can actually get posture breaks with Ice Spear because it does a little bit of posture damage on each hit, as you can see there. And then the Draconic Tree Sentinel here, I think it cut the end of the clip there, but he ends up dying. Now let's go on to mobs to show it off real quick, and then we're going to go over build, stats, equipment, everything you need to know for this awesome build. As far as mobs go, you're not going to be too concerned with them as long as you're using Ice Spear. If you can stand at medium range, they're going to take a good amount of damage from you. You're going to have to get used to the range. Most likely I did as well. It seems like sort of the way it looks that it might go further than it does. It is relatively short in the sense that it's something that looks like it could be long range, but it turns out to be medium range. But as you can see on screen here, you can wipe out mobs entirely using Ice Spear. It's that good. It's something that's really convenient to use against them. If you're ever running into trouble against mobs, you can pretty much one-shot the majority of them with Ice Spear. They're going to take a lot of damage, and in general, they're not going to be a lot of a concern for you. They're not going to be a concern because you're going to be able to wipe them off the face of, well, the lands in between because, again, they're going to come up to you, and you're just going to do a lot of damage from a medium range without even having to be that close to them, and the Clayman's Harpoon has decent AR too. Now for buffs, we're going to drink our tier first, which has the Faith and the Magic tier in it. Then we're going to use Golden Vow. Then after Golden Vow, we're going to use Howl of Shabriri. Then after you're done with Howl of Shabriri, you can fill up your FP. It would be a good idea to fill up at that point. And then you can use Ice Spear, or you can attack regularly with the, on Xbox for me, it would be RB and then right trigger for the charged attack. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have the Clayman's Harpoon in Cold Affinity with Ice Spear. Any seal, we hit 52 poise with that armor set. Shard of Alexander, Magic Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, and then we have the Magic tier, and then we have the Faith tier, so we can do buffs as well. Let's get into stats for this build. Now for stats, since it has a C in both, I went for 50 intelligence and 30 strength. I leaned more towards intelligence to give you around the 150 level, more variety in a sense. You'll be able to use spells and whatnot and do all that kinds of stuff if you want to as well. And if you want to, again, you can go 40-40 on both and get a lot of damage from the physical portion and the magic part. I just like having higher intelligence. It has good intelligence scaling on cold anyway because of the fact that you can include other stuff if you want to as well. There's the Ice Spear build. I know a lot of people have been waiting for that one, as I recently did a poll and it got voted on by, well, it was the majority winner, that's for sure. It was an awesome build and it's incredibly powerful. It wasn't something I used very often, but it's definitely something I'll use now. Ice Spear is a very powerful Ash of War. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. If you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.